Hi everyone, it's Marianne. Welcome to Very Plantmas, and for today's video, I'm sharing with you my top 10 houseplants in 2021. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm sharing with you my top 10 houseplants in my plant collection. So this is for the overall plant collection, not just those plants that I acquired in 2021. I've also created a separate video talking about my top 10 POTHOS plants. So I'm not going to be including any Epipanum, Philodendron Heteroseum, or Scindapsus Ficus plants in this video. So if you want to check it out, the link is up here and also down in the description. And to come up with my top 10 houseplants, I tried to pick my top plant from each genus of plant that is part of my plant collection. So let's go ahead and get started. So the very first one is none other than my Thigh Constellation Monstera. Thigh Constellation Monstera has always been a houseplant favorite of any houseplant lover, but I think it's going to really have a big year next year, especially when Costa Farms releases their Thigh Constellation Monstera. And the one that I have back there is the one that I won from the Costa Farms giveaway, and it's currently in that not box plant basket that feelhappy.com sent to me for free in exchange for my honest review. And I really like that not box plant basket because it adds to the festiveness, especially during this holiday season. And of course, it's sustainably made, and the company is a great sustainable small business that I'm very happy to support. So if you're interested in getting the not box planter, which I also shown in my holiday DIY video, if you haven't seen that yet, check it up here and also down in the description. And the link to that product is down in the description. And you could use the code Marianne25 to get 25% off your order on Amazon for the Not Box Plant Basket from Feel Happy. So go check it out if you're interested. And of course, I can also not mention my other Thicon that I imported from Thailand, this one. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that this grew into a pretty large plant since I got it from last year, but I did chop it off to do a plant trade for a Monstera Albo, and it has finally pushed out a new growth since I chopped it off. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I'll be using this new growth for a giveaway next spring. So if you're not subscribed to me yet, go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I announce that giveaway next year. And the next one in my top 10 list is from my ficus plants, which is my Ficus Ruby elastica. You probably have seen that in many of my video backgrounds. It's such a beautiful, gorgeous plant, and I love all my ficus plants, but this one really stands out as it's grown so tall this year. And I also created a video on how to get your ficus plants to branch, and that plant has already started to branch since I made that video, or the existing branch that it has already gotten bigger. So I'm really excited for that plant. As an honorable mention, I want to mention the Ficus Audrey, which is also the same thing. It's on its way to be just like the Ficus Ruby elastica, and I think would likely make my top 10 houseplants next year. So watch out for the Ficus Audrey. And next on my top 10 list is a Hoya plant. And I don't have a large Hoya collection, and as mentioned in previous videos, I'm not really a Hoya head, but honestly, any of my Hoya plants could be in my top 10 houseplants because they are great houseplants. And I would honorably mention my Hoya Crimson Princess and my Hoya Crimson Queen. But as part of my top 10 houseplants, I'm choosing the Hoya Curtisii, which is right here. This one I also got as part of my Thailand import last year, where Hoya Curtisii is not yet as readily available. Nowadays, you can even find this in big box stores, though I never had a good luck of finding it in a large basket, which I hope to find sometime next year. But this one is actually a great plant. Normally Hoyas, when you import them, they don't really travel well, and a lot of people who import Hoyas don't really have great experience or have a hit or miss experience with them. So with this one, I lucked out. Even though I got it a lot smaller than I expected, it grew pretty well. As you can see, it's already started to trail, and you could probably use some repotting, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do it next year. So I could lay these trails down on top of the soil so that it will also root down to the soil and be a much larger plant down the road. And the Hoya Curtisii is also a great alternative to those string of plants that you have problems with, like the string of pearls, and maybe for some string of hearts. Although I don't really have as much trouble with my string of hearts, this is a great alternative to it because this one is a much hardier plant compared to those type of string of plants. So definitely recommend the Hoya Curtisii. It's more unique than, I'd say, a regular Hoya carnosa. The leaves are smaller. It's speckled with silver or white. So this is a great addition to your houseplant collection, even if you're not a Hoya head yourself. And next one in my top 10 list is a Syngonium, and of course this one will not come as a surprise, the Syngonium Albo. I don't have a large Syngonium collection myself, but definitely, of course, the Syngonium Albo is a standout. Again, another part of my Thailand import from last year that did really well, and you might know in the late fall I did chop it off. I've been propagating it in water since, and this is actually rooted a lot, and I'm actually planning to pot this up now. So if you have seen my winter vacation plant care video, which might have already come out before this one, I would link it up here and in the description if possible. Then you would see me repotting this in a self-watering planter from Emerging Green. So yeah, so this is one of those plants that grew really well for me. Usually when you get albo variegated plants, they tend to be more finicky than other more common versions of the plant of this in the same genus, but this one is not. It grows pretty easily, and as well as a regular Syngonium plant. So I know this one is also being found in big box stores already. Not as frequent or as common, but you can find this in big box stores. So if you're lucky to find one, go get it. I think even in nurseries or online, they don't pack as high price as they used to. So this is also a great alternative for a Monstera albo or any albo variegated plant that has a higher price tag. This one definitely is a great dupe at a much more accessible and affordable price, and also it's a lot easier care plant. And next one is a peperomia, and this is my peperomia string of turtles. So peperomia is one of those plant genus that I'm not really attracted to or don't have a lot of. I probably had a couple of other peperomias in the past, and I think right now the only peperomia I have is a small peperomia hope. But this one, the string of turtles, is something that has been part of my wish list for a long time, and I finally got it. I think I got this last year. I don't think I got it this year. I got it definitely last year. And this one is also a very easy care plant compared to other string of plants. I water this, frankly, when I remember to, but I don't have any issues with it drying out or getting overwatered or anything like that. I did convert it into a shallower pot because this has a very shallow root system. When I first got it, it was in a 6-inch planter. And if you bought any plants from a big box stores, they usually come into those big, deep 6-inch pots, which it didn't really need because literally the plant was just sitting on top. So I just had to like take it off and plant it into this much more shallow pot. And so far it's doing well. And as you can see, it's trailing. I wanted to do a care video for this one this year, but I just didn't have time to include it into my content schedule. But maybe next year, if any of you are interested in a string of turtles care video, let me know down in the comments, and I'll make sure to make one next year. So number 6 in my top 10 houseplants is one that I grew from seed a couple years back, which is my mango plant. And I really am very proud of this plant because, as mentioned, I did grow this from seed, and it's already huge for a plant that is only about 2 to 3 years old. And of course, I don't think this is going to bear fruit anytime soon. It's probably going to take 7 years if it does. And usually for plants like a mango plant, the way to get it to bear good fruit is to graft it. So until I find a good mango plant to graft it, I don't think this would be bearing plants anytime soon. But as a ornamental floor plant, is actually really amazing. I usually have it outside during the growing season because this plant requires full sun normally, and I only bring it back in during the winter season, like right now. And it's downstairs right next to a south and west facing window, so you can get optimal light. It does act up a little bit during the winter because, like I said, it is a tropical tree. It needs a lot of that tropical conditions to stay alive, but it can survive the winter in my conditions, thankfully, even though it would suffer a little bit of cold damage because it is very sensitive to cold and low humidity levels. So that's the only thing about that mango plant, but I love it, and so far it has pretty much acclimated to my situation already. So hopefully I will not have a difficult time with it this winter season. I didn't really have one last year, but like I said, it did suffer some leaf damage, but as you can see right now, it came back in full force. It grew a lot of new branches, not just from the top after I pruned it from earlier this year, but also at the bottom. And next growing season, it's probably time to also repot it because I'm pretty sure it's a bit root bound already. For the last 4 plants that I'm going to include in this top 10 list, this is just choosing from the rest of my houseplant collection because I don't really have a lot of choices within the same genus for these plants, and starting with this one, the Dischidia Lontha Variegata. So this plant I don't really talk about in my channel, but I really like this one. I received this from a subscriber for like maybe a 3 to 4 leaf cutting, and it has grown into this. And I really like this one, especially again if you're into that string of plants or trailing house plants with small leaves like this that are a bit succulent like. And I highly recommend this because this one is honestly such a low maintenance plant, especially for a variegated plant. And this one has been in the same pot ever since I've gotten it, which is like about a 2-inch pot. It doesn't grow roots very vigorously, so it doesn't require a lot of repotting. And I initially wanted to stake it up, but it just trailed too long for me to continue staking it, so I'm just letting it trail right now. If you're not into or not very familiar with Dischidias, I would start with this one, the Dischidia Lontha Variegata. I keep forgetting its exact name, but it's a variegated Dischidia. When it comes to like underrated and plants that are not very much talked about, I highly recommend this Dischidia Variegata plant. And the next one in my top 10 list, and I know I said I'm not going to mention any Scindapsus ficus plants for this top 10 list because I already did a top 10 POTHOS plant video, but I forgot to include this in that video, so I'm including it in here, which is the Scindapsus Silver Hero. And as mentioned in my best or worst purchases plant video, that this one was part of my failed Etsy import order from Indonesia, but this one survived with a lot of luck and a lot of determination from just pretty much dying single nodes. So I'm really happy that this one actually survived the rehab and propagation and it has become into this, and I'm trying to turn this into a shingling plant, and it has produced 4 new leaves. So these are all new leaves under my care, and it hasn't grown new leaves since, and I haven't really seen it attempt to shingle. So hopefully it will actually shingle next year. And as mentioned in those previous videos, I don't mind it as a slow grower since I don't want it to grow its bamboo plant too quickly. But this is definitely one of my top 10 houseplants in 2021 just because of the effort that I put into basically reviving this plant from the dead. So this definitely deserves a spot in my top 10 list. So for number 8 in my top 10 list is also a plant that I really talk about, and I don't have any other plant in this genus or category of the prayer plants. As you know, a lot of people are very wary of calatheas because they don't really do well as houseplants no matter how beautiful they are. But I took a chance on one type of prayer plant which is supposedly a lot more easy care than a calathea, which is a Stromanthe Triostar. And I know for some this still doesn't work out as a great alternative for a calathea plant, but for me so far it is working out. It doesn't really require a lot from me. It does get brown tips every now and then, but compared to my experience with the white calathea fusion that I eventually killed because it suffered a lot of spider mites, and no matter what I did, even I put it right next to a humidifier, it was still getting dry tips. This one doesn't do that. This one just prefers to be watered on time and not have it dry out too much. But even then, sometimes I still have this plant dry out and it still does okay. And the worst it has done because I wasn't watering on time is to provide me some brown tips. Sometimes it does produce leaves like this that are super green, and I often cut them out because I want to encourage the pink variegation in this plant. Because what I love most about the Stromanthe Triostar and what made me take a chance in this plant is the pink variegation and the white variegation it has more than the green that it has. So I highly recommend this if you want to try a prayer plant but you don't want to get a calathea or you've been burned by a calathea plant before. So the Stromanthe Triostar. And the last plant in my top 10 list is a plant that is probably already chuggy, as the Gen Z kids would say, or no longer as popular as it used to be. especially when it first came out and everyone wanted to have their hands on this. And the tissue culture version of this plant is the one that is readily available. But now, like, the regular version of it is as accessible as the tissue culture one, and it's none other than my Rhapidophra Tetraspherma. So the reason that I am including this in my top 10 list, even though honestly this is probably don't break my favorite plants in my entire plant collection, but the reason that I'm including this is how resilient this plant is. So if you have been following me for a while, you know that this suffered root rot last year. It bounced back from that root rot, grew really long and really tall because I had it staked up, and then it fell off its plant stand and lost all that growth, pretty much got cut from the base, but it bounced back and came back stronger like a 90s trend, as Taylor Swift would say, and it produced not only one but 3 new growth points, and is now this plant. And this plant is often referred to as the mini Monstera because it does have that fenestrated leaf like a Monstera deliciosa, but it is a much smaller form plant. So if you don't have a space for a Monstera deliciosa, the Rhapidophra Tetraspherma is something that I highly recommend to anyone, but it does vine and it does need support eventually if you want to have this plant. So like this one, I eventually probably should give it a support. And also this one, a variegated version of this has also been popping up on Instagram. And of course, it has a huge price tag. Do I think a Rhapidophra variegated is worth it? I don't know. It doesn't have the same appeal to me as a Monstera Albo. I still think the Monstera Albo is the top tier plant to have when it comes to plants with albo variegation. But if you want one, I would suggest holding off because it might be one of those plants like the regular version that would become so easily available or more accessible in a couple years time. Because for this plant, as far as plant trends go, this one has a quick rise and fall. Like people say the Pilea peperomioides fell out of grace among plant people very quickly when it used to be so popular, but the Pilea peperomioides had a good few years on it before people kind of fell out of love with it. But this one, I think this was only popular, like really popular for a few months, maybe even up to a year, and that's it. So, but I do think it's a very resilient plant and a great plant to have in your plant collection. And like I said, it has been through ups and downs and it always just comes back stronger. So highly recommend Rhapidophra Tetraspherma if you're looking for a very resilient houseplant. But those are my top 10 plants for 2021. If there's a plant that you think should be included in this list, or if there's a plant that you think that will be very popular in 2022, also let me know down in the comments. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new here, please do subscribe. I come up with videos every week. And now that it's Plantmas, I come up with videos 3 times a week. And if you miss any of my previous Plantmas videos, I have the playlist linked up here and also down description, so you can check those out until my next one. But until then, I see you, I appreciate you, take care of yourself and each other, and have a plentiful holiday season. Bye!